Good evening. I'm Vittorio Aureli. I'm the professor here at the school, and I'm also a director of the institute. And it's a great pleasure tonight to introduce a new lecture in our lecture series by RC Architects. So Rohan Chavan will present a project which we will see soon. One of the best housing projects I've seen lately. So I'm very much looking forward. And I hope you will agree with my judgment. Of course, I've not been there. So it's always a professor of mine told me you cannot really judge a building if you have not visited really in person. But I don't know, from photographs and pictures look very promising. And but it's also a special night. I mean, I'm not going to introduce Rohan and RC Architects because someone else will do that. Akshar Gajjar, who is actually a PhD candidate at Tema Lab, directed by Professor Sarah Nichols. And actually, when we were putting together the lecture series, Akshar actually came with an idea to launch a sort of initiative that he will explain in a moment. And we were discussing who could contribute to our lecture series from, let's say, other parts of the world that are not actually Switzerland or France or whatever in our, let's say, close proximity. And actually, he mentioned to me, of course, the work of RC Architects. I have to say that although, of course, at that time I didn't remember the name, but as I told Rohan, actually, that when I saw the project, it was looking familiar because it was published just a few months before in Domus. So I'm still actually looking to architectural magazines belonging to like another generation. And that project was looking very familiar. So I thought that this is a wonderful opportunity to really bring actually Rohan to Europe. I think we are the first European school to welcome you. So we are very proud of that. But now I leave my microphone, actually the school's microphone to to Akshar.
I welcome Rohan Chavan for the presentation today. And Rohan is an architect and designer, founder of RC Architects. He started his practice in Mumbai in 2015 and operates between Mumbai and Bangalore at the moment to work on projects related to public and community sanitation, urban design, affordable housing, an example that we see today, single-family homes and institutions. Particularly interesting and fascinating is also his work on public toilets and their role as social spaces. So I encourage you to look that up. And a short note on affordable housing in India. In the post-independence period, with such a big movement of mass due to partition, there was a strong culture of affordable low-cost housing that was really dealt head-on with a lot of architects of the time. But unfortunately, from 1990s onwards, there has been a sharp decline in architecture disciplines' capacity, not just capacity, but the will, I would say, to deal with this question. And so I am extremely excited to see your presentation and to see how you deal with this very complex issue in a very complex country. So over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Pier for inviting me all the way from India. So this is my first presentation in Europe. Yeah, and thank you, Akshar, for the introduction. I mean, it's quite nice. So we'll directly dive into the project. So when one thinks about affordable housing, one encounters many questions. So does affordability mean living in small compact homes? Or does it mean that one compromises on the lifestyle? Or does it mean access to amenities is compromised? So just to kind of encapsulate on this, we looked at the vernacular architecture of India. So one finds these commonalities. So the way one approached the vernacular architecture is through site responsive and microclimatic adaptation, emphasis on communal living, use of local materials, flexibility and adaptability, sustainable practices, and the cultural expression. But to kind of consolidate all these ideas into one space that is an identity of the Indian architecture is the courtyard. So the courtyard in Indian architecture is much more than a structural element. It is the beating heart of the home, an inside-out city, what I would call. The central space draws life inward, where the walls embrace and protect, creating a world within the world, a sacred enclosure that opens to the sky. In these open cores, architecture becomes poetry, where each courtyard is a canvas for the play of light, air, and life itself. A timeless symbol of shelter, community, and the intimate bond between people and place. And as you see in India, the courtyard is termed with different terminologies. Some call it an angan, a chowk, a vada, an anganwadi. So that, varies because of different geographies and different cultures that are set in different geographies. So in India, the common Indian aspires to desire a own house. It holds deep cultural and emotional significance in a rapidly developing yet complex economy. Homeownership is more than a transaction. It is a life milestone. A house number in one's name symbolizes not just financial success, but personal triumph, making the moment one feels they have truly made it. Or a home in India embodies far more than just physical shelter. It stands as a sanctuary of comfort, a testament to long-sought stability, and a visible marker of social achievement. For many, it is the culmination of years of relentless hard work, sacrifice, and aspiration. It represents not only the fulfillment of individual dreams, but also the collective hopes of family and future generations. But the truth is not so great. So when the average Indian embarks on the journey of finding a home filled with aspirations of comfort and fulfillment, they're often confronted with a stark reality. Cramped matchbox-sized apartments are the norm, offering views of not more than adjacent buildings, often located in poorly developed areas with limited access to essential amenities. And these buildings are often nothing more than the repetitive, soulless structures designed with no greater purpose than to provide a basic roof over one's head. Faced with a lack of viable alternatives, the average Indian is frequently compelled to compromise, settling for housing that falls far short of their initial hopes and expectations. So here, the agency of design can play an important role, where the architectural design has the power to make a significant impact in various ways, starting with the efficient planning of limited spaces, crafting delightful environments with open spaces which sit in harmony with its context, and foster a strong sense of connectivity within the community. So this led us to design, or I won't say design, but look at housing through these 5 lenses. I would call it like a framework for us when we set out to design affordable housing. So the first one is the density, where we try and understand how many people should live on a given plot of the size of a plot. Second is the space, the efficient usage. How can one maximize the usage of space? The third is the circulation and community space, then amenities and community space. And the fifth one is a proposition of how housing can become a prototype and can become a network to boost the rural economy of surrounding villages. So for me, density is the most important aspect when one looks at a housing project. It's very important to understand how many people should inhabit a site. So defining density is key to ensuring each person has adequate space for personal and communal needs while maintaining an open, breathable environment. Thoughtfully managing this balance prevents overcrowding and creates porous massing on the site, placing equal emphasis on the architecture of the unbuilt. And the number of houses at any given site should not be calculated based on the FSI. That's what happens in India. So when a developer kind of starts to understand how much FSI he wants to build, he just calculates it based on the norms that are given, but not think of what is the quality of life and how many people should occupy. They need to be based on the area required per person, including amenities. The per person area will give us the number of people a given site can accommodate, and then the number of houses. The remaining area from the FSI can provide for daily need facilities like a grocery shop, a medical unit with visiting doctors, a vegetable market, a women welfare center, a place for community entertainment, a daycare center, an ironing shop. This creates an inclusive housing that is self-sustainable and has direct access to fresh food and daily needs. So we started looking at a map of how do we arrive to this number. So I came across this mathematics when I was working with Charles Correa way back in 2010. So this is a math that we have considered a certain, based on the standards, we have looked at amenities. What is the per person area required for amenities? So let's say for schools and hospital, it's 6 square meters. Green areas are 8 square meters. So for amenities, a person requires a 14 square meters of area, which at most could be reduced to 10 square meters. Then we used that standard of 10 square meters, and then we looked at, let's say, how a family of 5 in a luxury apartment of 200 square meters occupy an area of 40 square meter per person. So we add that to the amenities. And then if you see the graph, the chart below, we keep on adding the floors. The number kind of starts becoming constant to 14 and 12. And as we go further, it starts getting constant to 11 to 10.5. So that's the average that we have considered for a luxury apartment. And the same thing we applied for an EWS, an economically weaker section housing. And again, you see on the right-hand side that the number falls between 10.5, 10.2. So again, the average falls down between 10.5 and 11 square meters. So thus, regardless of the size of the house, if it's 25 square meters or 200 square meters, the curve flattens between 10.5 to 11 square meters per person. So that is the standard that we thought could be applied when we start planning, like how many people could inhabit a particular site. So therefore, for a site of 10,000 square meters, the maximum population will be 10,000 by 10, that is 1,000 people or 200 families. So this is the master plan of the affordable housing that we are we finished one building, the second building is yet to get built. But as a formula, we applied it to this site and said, we can have maximum 33 families living in this site, and the remaining area we can use for open spaces, amenities, and so on. The next framework is space. Space is the most valuable and costly element in construction, making it essential that every square meter is utilized with precision and purpose. Efficient and thoughtful use of space ensures both functionality and value, maximizing the potential of every area within a structure. So when we started looking at space, the constant question was, how do we arrive at a form that is more economical? So we started looking at the basic attributes of a form, like the area, the perimeter, how that could give us a solution for an economical form. So as you see on, comparing a square and a rectangle enclosing the same area, we derived that a square requires a lesser perimeter for construction, making it a more economical form. So that's why we thought, a square can give us a more affordable form in terms of construction. And you can see the comparison between the two. It means that when a rectangle starts becoming a square, it starts to kind of reduce the perimeter of construction. So then we thought we'll use a square to kind of create the single unit of housing. So this is how the square is translated into a single unit. So we use the square as the base, and we divided it into 4 parts. Then we had 3 rooms which would create one single unit. And then the remaining space, we use as a terrace garden. And then we have this L-shaped formation of the single unit, which would be the most primary unit of this affordable housing scheme. And then we kind of started analyzing how this single unit can be dynamic in terms of its usage. And then we analyzed it at different times of the day. So if you see in the early morning, the living room is a place to sit, have tea, breakfast, and newspaper. The terrace and bedroom are used as space for meditation and yoga. I mean, these are based on the Indian lifestyle patterns, what people aspire for. Then again, morning 9 to 12, the living room along with the terrace is used as a study area where one can sit, write, and think. Then afternoon, the spaces are effectively used as sleeping spaces. Again, in the afternoon at night, the living room is effectively used as a dining space during lunch and dinner. In the evening, the living room is used for meeting family and friends, and the terrace for kids to play. These spaces become greatly active during gatherings and festivals. So this dynamism in space came through this architecture of the courtyard, like how it is being used as effectively at different times of the day. And this is the aspiration of the many Indian families, that they would aspire to have a house that is so dynamic in terms of its usage. And then the void spaces kind of generate these kind of courtyard typologies that one can look at. But we, based on the activity and the living patterns, the L-shaped typology is one that we have used for this particular project. And then this is the L-shaped construct around the terrace garden. So the terrace garden effectively performs like more like a passive light and ventilation device, which ventilates the rooms on its either sides. Yes, and these are some sectional diagrams that kind of give you the understanding of how the sun enters into the rooms during the equinox and solstice. This can be seen inside the units that are built, and the space then blends seamlessly between the inside as well as the outside. Then these L-shaped units are arranged in a plan where the open space interlocks with the neighboring units, increasing the possibility of expansion and incrementality between the two units. So this is the floor plan of the apartment, where you can see the open spaces arranged in which are interlocking with the neighboring apartment, and one can even connect to the apartment through the open spaces. And then this diagram is further translated into a floor plan with a proper dimension. And as you see, all the spaces are, all the service cores are very, very compact in each unit, which forms the kitchen and the toilet cores, and the rooms are pretty much open, which are overlooking onto the terrace. And the new floor plan is stacked upon one another, consisting of 13 single bedroom units and 3 two-bedroom units. I feel this diagram is very scientific in the sense it consists of highly efficient living patterns of a single unit that populates itself to form a community of open, semi-open, and enclosed spaces for use at different times of the day. And these two sets of diagrams explain the dynamic nature of the single unit, like how it can expand vertically as well as horizontally. As you see on the left-hand side, we have the permutation of how the L shape can be formed over time. And then this is how it grows vertically, where the courtyard can allow for a staircase. And you have an additional room on the top, or 2 rooms on the top, one that can be accessed from the staircase. And horizontally, it just mirrors itself to form a C-shaped plan. The L shape becomes a C. The central challenge in housing lies in creating spaces that are both suitable and evoke a true sense of room. Places that feel personal and embody individual identity. Architecture must balance adaptability to serve a diverse, often anonymous clientele. This can be accomplished by offering a flexible kit of parts that allow for various permutations and combinations, enabling space to evolve and adapt over time to individual needs and personalization. This approach ensures the home remains dynamic, shaped by its inhabitants. So going ahead, we looked at, so what was the idea of the space, how it can be used dynamically. And then the second attribute was the kit of parts that can add value to the space. So the first one, we saw the ambiguity of usage, which is the open plan. It functions based on different times of the day with different activity patterns. Then there is the temporality in space with movable partitions, climate controls, add-on spaces, add-in spaces, and the personalization of spaces. Each element is designed as a separate entity that together forms the visual design language of the complete construct. So here, I'm trying to dissect each element into these smaller parts which have made this project into what it looks like. So the first set is the windows, which I think form the major design language of the facade. So these are categorized into 6 types. So we have like the type 1, which is a double box window for kitchen and bedroom. And the box below is a place where one can keep the outdoor unit of the AC. Then the other 2 are the full height windows which open into the living room with a railing. Then the type 4 is again a bedroom window with a provision for AC outdoor unit. The type 5 is a normal window which can be attached to any room without an air conditioner outdoor unit box. And the last type is a P-shaped unit which is along the service duct, so that is used for accessing the service ducts. And I would purposely like to show you like what went through, making these windows possible on site. So we went through the series of working drawings that would kind of set up these windows in concrete. So later, the exercise was only to kind of get the sliding window fixtures and put in place. And if you see the edge detail where it is an L-shaped notch that receives the window grill. And window grills is a thing in India because no client will want their houses without window grills. Yeah, it's kind of a safety parameter. I mean, can't help it. I mean, you'd like to design houses without grills, but I think it's not possible. And then you see this other window type which has a box below where, and that box is primarily designed to keep the outdoor unit. I mean, it should not stick on the facade. I mean, in India, anytime if you all visit India, you will see a lot of buildings having AC outdoor unit boxes on their facades just hanging there. So we didn't want that to happen. So that's why we have this detail where all the outdoor unit boxes are taken care of. And this is a combination window between a bedroom and a kitchen. The right side is the bedroom, and on the left, we have the kitchen window, which has an L-shaped storage. So I can use that as a storage from the kitchen. And then these are again these long windows that open into the living room or also open outside on the view. Again, a long window with a wider dimension. And this is what the construct looks like. I mean, you see all the AC outdoor boxes. I mean, those houses are yet to be occupied. That's why all these windows are empty. I mean, it's also a way to understand which house is occupied and which house is not, even based on the outdoor unit location. So that's an interesting marker. But that's how the window modulates, and very systematically it creates this facade. And visually, we tried to separate these elements. I mean, if this entire building was in one color, it would have created a very monotonous mass. So we've tried to separate out these windows, these outdoor unit boxes, the grills and the terraces, and even the shutters of the balconies. I mean, the one that open are red in color, the one that do not open, the one that are fixed are in silver. So that was the one set of kit of parts. And then these are the concrete screens that we customized, and these screens are primarily to seal the common areas, the passages and the staircase landings and so on. So we have like 3 types for this. And so this type A, B and C. So basically type A has more of the smaller openings and less of larger openings. B has a combination of both, and these are the working drawings that we produce, and you can see the section below of how they modulate. And a C has a lot of bigger size openings. The reason to do this was based on the direction from where the rain comes, or based on the direction of the sunlight. We could modulate these panels and create the openness as we desire. And the section kind of gives you an idea of how they are stacked upon one another to form screen. And these were all locally manufactured. I mean, we did not go to any special factory. It was crafted in a small lane in Bombay where, I mean, you can see it is as primitive as it could be. So this man, he made these 3 molds by himself. It took him a little time to understand what he has to make, but once he understood, he made it so perfect that it was as good as the drawing. So essentially how it works is, this is a wooden mold, and then the concrete is poured on this, and all the negative spaces get filled with concrete, and then you can manufacture any number of panels out of it. And then along with concrete, we have some metal rods going in X and the Y direction, which kind of hold these panels together. And that's how they appear after getting installed. So you see all these passage areas. I mean, the place where this building is has a very high rainfall. So we wanted to screen all the common areas from high rainfall. That is one. Secondly, the pigeons, which, I mean, the population is, I mean, as high as the population from India. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of pigeons in India. So we just wanted to keep them away. And obviously the sun. So the sun, we want to invite the sun, but since being in a harsh climate, we want, to have the beauty of the sun entering into the common areas. And yeah, at different times of the day, we get different patterns from these jalis, and these are all the common spaces that are constructed. Then even the staircase railing also follows the pattern of the squares and so forth. So the visual language comes into play there. The next set is the balconies, which are attached to the edges, and these spaces are the extensions of the bedrooms. So at night, if one even wants to leave the bedroom door open and have this screen as a layer of protection, one will enjoy a nice breeze into the rooms. I mean, the climate in India is very different compared here. Here we cannot do that because it's very cold. So this is completely contextual. And again, this detail comes out of the beam and the slab. The balcony just extends. The slab just extends and becomes a balcony. Again, that L-shaped notch is to receive the metal screen. So we have 2 types of balconies. One is a wider, one is a little shorter. And that's how these elements appear. So they have like an operable shutter. So one can even open it, leave it open for security. It can be closed. I mean, it has many possibilities. And it also adds a great value to the facade. And another kit-off part are the terrace gardens. So the terrace garden, they kind of form a great part of the facade. As you see, there are like 5 types of a terrace garden, each with a different set of modulation of the perforated mesh. And each terrace has 1 square opening that allows you to open the shutter and look outside and not feel as if you're in some sort of a cage. Yeah, and those are those L-shaped terraces. So this facades, the metal shutters open and kind of give you a view outside. Yeah, that's how the space looks like. I mean, from the inside, it forms. So this is like a very small space, like must be around 10 feet by 10 feet, like around 100 square feet. But for an affordable housing, it adds a lot of value in terms of the size of the house, because all these houses are roughly 350 square feet. That is 35 square meters approximately. But this space which is added allows one to do a lot of permutations and combinations with this open space and use the indoor space accordingly based on different times of the day. and all the passive lighting and ventilation happens from here. And the beauty of this plan is from the living room, you can see this space, and from the other room also you see that space. So at a time you feel you have two of these spaces because you see the same space from the two different spaces. Yeah, and yeah, on the left-hand side you can see that terrace boxes coming out where the two girls are standing. And then we have used a perforated mesh to kind of enclose this. And the reason I took a detailed shot of that is the building surface is an opposite of what a mesh is. So it's like an interlocking surface pattern with each other, and that's how the terrace kind of appears to be. Yes, and again, then this kit of part adds a great value to the facade, creating interesting volumes. And that's how it appears. So you see a terrace garden, the concrete screen, the balcony, the windows, all coming together onto this facade. But they are functional elements. They're not just aesthetically designed. So it's kind of function and aesthetics going hand in hand, which and it went through a series of process which allowed us to reach here through these kit of parts. And the kit of parts, in fact, add value to the space. So the space kind of gets enhanced with these elements. Again, you can see these two houses are occupied because the outdoor units are there. The rest are still in process. And this shot was taken when the building was getting painted. So part of it on the top is incomplete. And yes, again, the same set of kit of parts that allow you to understand various different elements in the overall construct. So the construction technique we used here is very simple. It's RCC beams and columns, but the flexibility is that one can use any material for the walls, for the infill, based on the context and the locally available materials. And the reason to do that was this site was in a remote area. So we did not want to experiment with the construction method, something that the local labor could understand how to build. And that was the primary guiding factor because one has to construct this building. The third part of the framework is the circulation and the community space. So, and this is a very typical of the Indian culture. So in olden days, community spaces were used to reinforce the housing to create external. And they always embedded a sense of community. A child would never be alone at home. A relative or neighbor was always around to help one another. The pungent smell of tasty food, chit-chatting through spaces, gathering on the common terrace during power cuts, all encourage one to partake in the everyday life of another in the colony. So going ahead, I would like to just show you a short film to kind of just reinforce the idea of community spaces. So this is a film made by Urban Design Research Institute on affordable housing, which has been built by the Maharashtra Housing and Development Authority. And the kind of housing that they build and what the city is going through, I think one would get to see through this a short film.
The development plan for Greater Mumbai 2034 promises Mumbaikars 1 million houses, 8 million jobs, several open spaces and slum rehabilitation projects. But there is a wide gap between these highly aspirational figures and the reality on the ground, as there are no details on where these houses will be located, how the infrastructure will be, or how they will impact the quality of life. Is it yet another scenario where, to secure the luxury of a few, the rest will be crammed into densely planned areas as a tick box exercise? This is the case, for example, SRE developments, where the right to life of citizens is severely overlooked. SRA areas, 1 in 10 persons suffers from tuberculosis, and that person may further affect 15 people across the city. This is all thanks to the misleading development control regulations that it won't be long before Mumbai is faced with an epidemic.
मेरा नाम रावसाहेब देशमुख कामले है। मैं देवगिरी कोऑपरेटिव हाउसिंग सोसाइटी लल्लूभाई कंपाउंड मुंबई नंबर 43 में रहता हूँ। ये 2 साल में मेरे को 2 बार टीबी हो गया।
Like Mr. Kamle, this is the story of thousands of residents of SRA buildings living in Mumbai today who are suffering from multi-drug resistant and extreme drug resistant TB. A report by Doctors for You shockingly reveals that in order to pack in maximum tenements in limited space, 8-story slum rehabilitation buildings have been built back to back with barely any side open spaces between 2 buildings, depriving them of natural light and ventilation, thus leading to the spread of tuberculosis. According to a report published in Times of India, there has been a 36% rise in drug-resistant TB cases in Mumbai since 3 years.
बहन की लड़की मेरी 12 साल की थी और यहाँ की गंदगी की वजह से उसको टीबी हो गया था और वो टीबी से मर गई।
मेरा नाम रोहन पाल है। मैं लल्लूभाई कंपाउंड में रहता हूँ। यहाँ मैं 7 साल से रह रहा हूँ। रहते रहते हमारी लड़की को टीबी हुई और उसके बाद मुझे भी टीबी हुई।
रोशनी आती नहीं, इसके लिए हम लोगों को सुबह से लेकर शाम तक 12 बजे से लेकर रात तक हमको ट्यूबलाइट लगाना एडजस्ट करना पड़ता है। इधर बहुत लोगों को टीबी हो गया है।
दोपहर के 2:30 बज रहे लेकिन लाइट चालू है हमारे घर में। धूप क्योंकि आती नहीं है बिल्कुल, हर वक्त लाइट चालू ही रहती है हमारे घर में।
So they're talking about how this artificial light they have to use during the day.
चश्मा लग रहा है घर के उजाले से, रोशनी बिल्कुल नहीं है बाहर।
What is worse, that these buildings are extremely unhygienic and unlivable, littered with filth, overflowing sewage, exposing residents to severe health risks and further aggravating their situation. And this is just the start. The DP 2034 falsely promises us Mumbaikars with affordable housing with even more diluted building standards. With an FSI of 4 as per the development plan, the population density would be 1.1 million per square kilometre. Such density is unheard of anywhere in the world, which means cramming 1/3 of India's total population in Mumbai alone. High-density living conditions and a reduction of the side margins create a heat island effect, which increases the temperature of the neighborhood, making it the perfect breeding environment for bacteria which causes tuberculosis. Along with SRE residents, all Mumbaikars are at high risk, given the vast mobility of working citizens across the city's transport networks. What the policymakers aren't telling us is that with such provisions, Mumbai will soon develop into a highly infectious spot for deadly TB. While the mega plans for providing affordable housing seems like a big relief, but in reality, with free housing comes free TB.
So that was a great example of what happens when there are higher densities, lack of light and ventilation, and one compromises on the open spaces. I mean, this is a sketch. In fact, this is the first sketch that we did for this housing. I mean, we saw the movie afterwards, but yeah, I mean, naturally we inclined towards creating better spaces for people. And so it was always like, you know, having community spaces where people can talk to each other, have good light and ventilation, and have a good communal life. And this is a detail where the community spaces in so this is a sectional perspective of the project, where, I mean, it's not a brick project, it's a very tight housing scheme, but what we wanted to do was to have these community spaces scooped out wherever we could. So here, if you see, the staircase landing is getting extended and becoming a space for the senior citizens, or even that could be a space for the teenagers or the youngsters or the kids, or even a place where one can just sit and contemplate. And then, as you see, these are the community spaces which are marked in the drawing, and one can see how well lit and ventilated are these spaces. They're not like big open spaces, but it just allows for chance interactions. And that's where the staircase gets extended and becomes a place to sit. Or we have these pocket, I would call them like pocket terraces along the pathway, which would again allow for another layer of common space. And these spaces kind of add value to the affordable housing because as you see in that film, I mean, there's so much lack of accessibility to these kind of resources that allows one to stay in a very cramped living conditions. So this was phase 1, and I would also like to show you some bits of phase 2 of what we are planning to do. So these are the 2 buildings. So phase 1 is sitting there. We saw some real-time pictures of phase 1. Phase 2 is yet to be constructed. They're separated by a common access road set. But before showing phase 2, I would like to hint on the aspect of amenities and how community spaces and amenities can go hand in hand. Because in the earlier part, I was talking about how the FSI, can be subsidized and one can use it for amenities. So amenities play a crucial role in housing, extending beyond convenience to significantly impact residents' quality of life. So financial well-being, sense of community. By offering essential services and facilities close to home, well-designed amenities help reduce daily expenses, promote social interaction, and create a supportive living environment. Moreover, accessible amenities encourage a healthier lifestyle, enhance property value, and contribute to long-term satisfaction and stability within residential spaces. In a sense, amenities are integral to building a sustainable, thriving community within a housing development. So that's a part plan of the phase 2, where front is completely reserved for amenities, where one can imagine a milk shop, grocery shop, pharmacy, stationery, and so on. So these are the things that one requires on a daily basis to thrive in a housing project. And if you see that the ground floor is all that. So those are all the spaces reserved for amenities, and those are scooped out from the overall FSI, and then the remaining area is given for housing. So the idea of life cycle cost in low-cost housing, much like the concept practiced in sustainable architecture, goes beyond conventional metrics of construction cost savings, and instead adopting a holistic approach to low-cost housing across a building's entire lifespan and its potential within the urban fabric. This model prioritizes cost efficiency on 3 interconnected levels. First, by optimizing the cost of construction, it leverages design efficiencies and innovative materials that minimize maintenance cost over time. Second, it reduces the cost of living by integrating cost-saving amenities, such as shared resources and community-centric spaces, which foster a self-sustaining environment, lower household expenses, and diminish the need for external services. Finally, urban network synergies are achieved by clustering these robust housing units into interconnected neighborhoods that share resources, services, and infrastructure. These clusters form a symbiotic urban network that further reduces cost associated with transportation, waste management, and resource sharing, particularly in the third world urban context. And these are some montages of phase 2, and that's the community space where one enters on the ground, and you can see 2 staircase courses that go up. So here we have 2 of such buildings, like phase 1. And then again, we have this community spaces, which I call the inside-out city, which are derived from the courtyard. So this is the ground floor of phase 2, where these are open spaces for communal life, completely filtered with light and landscape. Yes, and those are the 2 blocks in the front and the back. On the right-hand side is the phase 1, and in the middle we have like tucked in 2 bungalows, which are special designs. I mean, if someone wants to have a bungalow within this setting, one can easily buy those 2 units. And this is the facade on one side, but if you see, this open space goes right across from phase 2 to phase 1. You see the phase 1 building on the back side. And this is the last point of the framework, is that the network of how can one boost the rural economy. A home, although personal, cannot be viewed as an individual entity when a room harmonizes within a house, the house connects with its community and the community weaves into the urban fabric. A dialogue emerges. When these layers interact seamlessly, they create the conditions for a more vibrant and fulfilling life. So as a design aspect, we were trying to create this kind of network where the housing operates like a communication center, which connects with the amenities, which as well connects with the village farmer as well as with the core urban areas. And the housing itself becomes a prototype where, they can bring all these three components together. And in India, at a certain level, ITC is doing that. So the farmers get more benefit from this kind of an initiative, and they get better price for their produce when they come in direct contact with the housing communities. And then I'll take you through some construction images of how this project was realized. So this is the first drawing that we issue on site. It's a centerline drawing. I mean, that's how we build projects. In India, we have like a column grid and a centerline. So this is then marked on the site and this is a very traditional way of doing it. I mean, these days we have instruments like total station and other things which, mark the coordinates on the site. But here, since the site was remote, we had to follow a particular method because the contractor did not have all those latest equipments. So essentially, we have these wooden planks kind of marked on all four sides, and the dimensions are marked on that. And if you see, there are these threads, they are going in X direction and the Y direction that give you the position of the columns. And that's how these columns are marked on the ground in chalk. And yeah, so that is the lift core where the man is standing. And it is important to get this right because you don't have machines and you have to depend on people to mark that, and developing trust is the most important thing here to, so we have to go several times and check, is it as per the drawing, is it correct, or how it has been done. And so once the columns are identified in the correct location, they start kind of digging the base of the foundation. So they kind of dig it and put a layer of PCC 3 to 4 inches thick. No, first the rubble soiling is done and then they put the layer of, so this is the kind of rubble soiling that is done, and then they layer it with PCC to kind of erect footing. So you have these kind of number of platforms that are created on the ground inside the foundation, which kind of allows the base for the columns. And this is the site for the phase 2, which is kind of used like a workshop for all these people who make the reinforced columns and beams and the footing bases. And that's how it is tied and anchored with the stirrups. And then you have these small spaces that are kept so the concrete goes below it and settles down. It kind of creates the cover for the footing. And then an interesting thing we tried to do was to create some mock-ups which we wanted to later use as finishes. So if you see here, we have used the corrugated concrete shuttering to understand how it will come out with the available resources. So that we have used later in the ceiling of the common areas. And that's how you see all the footings getting cast. And so once this is done, you have a sigh of relief. Then the building is going to get constructed the way it is, because then from here onwards the project goes in an autopilot mode and it starts building itself, and it's just a matter of releasing drawings at the correct time. And this is another working drawing which shows the beam grid of the first floor, and the common areas are just highlighted to just give you a sense of orientation of where the staircase sits in reference to the building. And again, so the shuttering is done in a similar fashion, where it's 1 or 2 people, they sit and they work for 2 or 3 days to kind of cast the shuttering. So this is the shuttering for the beam and the slab, and on this side you see the staircase. And after the shuttering, again the same method where the reinforcement is laid and the concrete is poured. And here you can see like a little bit of that corrugated shuttering. I have a better image there. Just go ahead. And this is actually the context of the project where we get a view of these hills. But this is where the municipality edge ends. That's why there's no building on that side. It's all open space, and it's part of the layout planning. And then you have these structures where the concrete gets mixed on the ground and it comes up and gets poured. Again, it goes down and so on. And these are the typical floor drawings. So these are the kind of working drawings we release on site, where the different wall thicknesses are marked in different colors for better understanding and alignments. And as you see, that's how so first the RCC structure comes up and simultaneously the brickwork starts. And here you can see the window boxes are getting cast with the double window with the kitchen and the bed combination. And to the left of that is the terrace void. And this is the facade of the other side, the triangular side, which kind of steps back and folds itself. So that's the lift core, and then these are the other spaces. And as I said, the brickwork starts simultaneously as the building, the RCC work goes above the second floor. So all the props are removed, and it makes space for them to kind of inhabit the floor and kind of make the brickwork. And these are some very basic sectional drawings just for the understanding of heights and which are the sunken areas, the clear dimensions. And parallelly the staircase also, kind of starts going up. And these are very, very basic drawings, but with all the floor levels and dimensions. And that's the window which we saw initially, where we have the AC box detail below and the top part is a window. And on the right hand side you see the terrace. And the fact that there's so much shade into the space allows one to feel very, very comfortable in these spaces, because the terrace really becomes like a place where one can expect like a passive light and ventilation coming through that space. And yeah, so this is the corrugated concrete I was talking about. So you see we have laid down the metal corrugated sheet, and after it is removed we get a corrugated pattern in the ceiling. Again, very basic drawings of sections. And for the lift we tried this plank finish. I mean, it's nothing new, but we just wanted to see in this geography if we can try and experiment with this, just to kind of have an additional layer of texture to the lift core. So we just have these wooden planks in different thicknesses. So when it's cast, you get these concrete surfaces with a little relief work. Some are outside, some are inside. And on the right hand side, you see that after each lift of the floor, that shuttering keeps moving up for the lift core. So that's how it moves. And as a result of that, we have those horizontal lines on the lift shaft. Yeah, that's the phase one. And so this is the empty site where we are going to start phase two right now. And that's a little shed where all the workers on the site, they live. They built it out of the shuttering ply. So it is like their own architecture. They did it by themselves. Okay. And with the same attitude, we looked into a few more projects and a few more user groups, which one prototype was for the truck drivers. And so this was, I'll just show 2 slides. I won't extend too much into it. But the fact that this is also a kind of a part of an affordable housing. These prototypes are situated on the highway. So a large part of export in India depends on the truck drivers. So we have created this infrastructure for them where they can pause for a while, relax, and use this space and then continue on their journey, because they drive for 22 hours at a stretch. So as of today, there are no facilities in India for them, but I think the only facility is they park their truck somewhere, they take rest, and behind that they have their own little pantry and kitchen, and then they kind of survive on that. And so these are the kind of, so they can share a cup of tea over a game of carrom maybe, and a housing facility for them, so they can, overnight they can just relax and kind of carry on their journey. And a similar type of incremental housing we proposed in Rajasthan, which is a place, no, this is in Jaipur, in state of Rajasthan. And again, with the same idea of how we can create affordable infrastructure for the user groups who are not so privileged. And at the same time, they are taken care of, they feel that they're respected, and then they feel that they're a part of this community living. And after all this exercise, I mean, we realized that in India, yes, one aspect is creating affordable housing, but the housing is only affordable if it just costs 3 times the annual salary of the head of the family. So that is what we concluded, the gist of this whole exercise. But yet, the people in India, they aspire for an angan, they aspire for the courtyard. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was a really wonderful lecture. I have to say, so far we had very good lectures, but this was really, really top, in my opinion. So it's amazing because you showed not just the labor of design, but also the labor of construction, and it's very rare to have such a threat, actually, to see also construction as part of what we can call architecture. I mean, it sounds obvious, but I don't see many presentations that really also add that layer. Mm-hmm. I don't have actually any specific question. I mean, there were 2 comments that I really wanted to say, because when I saw the first time your housing, and of course the most catchy image is this facade, which is actually very beautiful. And actually, your lecture completely contradicted my impression, because in fact you seems to have designed everything from the inside out.
Right.
No, so in a way, the facade seems to be just the result of the living unit, and then the whole facade, the windows actually kit of parts. And I thought that this was it's a very modernist approach. Although then, when you see the project, this sort of approach seems to be, you are impressed by the facade, in fact.
Right.
And the second comment, which I think it's really astonishing achievement of your project, is that this is one of the very few cases in which you managed to do a multi-story courtyard house.
Right.
I mean, the only project that comes to my mind that does the same, but of course it's not affordable housing, is Le Corbusier Immeuble Villa. Mm-hmm. But of course is villas, superimposed villas. So this is an incredible typological twist, because you take the courtyard house that usually is a 1-story building, and you in fact make you stack courtyard houses basically. And I thought that this was really incredible. I mean, my question perhaps would be, of course you started with the unit, but how that plan, this L shape, it's an L shape at the level of the unit, but also at the level of the whole housing. It was that something you had in mind before, or it really came from the housing unit?
No, it did come from the housing unit. I mean, I did not have a preconceived idea of making an L-shaped plan. Around that time, what happened was myself and the client, we both got a chance to visit Bijoy Jain's house around that time. And we were really fascinated with the way he has put the 7 courtyards in his own house. And somewhere we both started talking about how do we get that into this housing project that we do. So the constant struggle was, how do we get it? So can it be a C shape, or can it be like 2 things on the side? But at the same time, we had this restriction of it has to be only 35 square meters of a plan. And then because we cannot go beyond that. Because in housing, there is also something that works for this geography. I mean, the people living here, they will not buy a house which is more than 35 square meters for a 1-bedroom apartment.
Right.
Because that is what they are used to and that is what they are comfortable with. I mean, and this happens based on what is the construction that is going around. So that was not a preconceived thought. So we arrived at it through many permutations. So one fine day, I had this plan. I said, okay, this is what I think works the best. So I sent it across to him. And the client has his own office. So he printed those plans and he gave those plans to all his staff and asked them to find out mistakes. So everyone, instead of finding mistakes, everyone had like very good comments on that. And we can use this space like this, we can use this space like that. So we arrived at that first, the single unit first. And then based on that, we like kind of postulated and modified and saw how it fits into the site. So it was a very organic process, like as you said, the facade, even if I look today, it looks stunning, but it just came out of an organic process and it didn't go from this to that, but it came from that to this. Yeah.
Yeah, also, what is really amazing, this when you just see the plan of the columns.
Right.
I think that's, it's amazing because it's something you think it's really like the formal gesture, but in fact came from this logic that you followed. It's a very logical plan in a way, but then you have this amazing forest of columns.
Yes.
It's really a joy to see it. But maybe there are questions from the audience.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Mine is more from a comment also what linking to this typological seems to me that there is a reference that maybe you also mentioned by Charles Correa. You work together, right? So and what is actually something that reinforces this link seems to me is also the fact, although you mentioned that not so many times, but there is some words that today's perhaps in architects' jargon started gradually to disappear, which is the word poetics and the word beauty. When you said that there is a certain poetics also in the way you try to put together this facade together. So it's true that it's the inside out, but at the same time you seems to want to govern the composition at the very end.
Right.
And also when you mentioned the word beauty, maybe in a very shy way, when you said there is the beauty of the sun that enters through these holes that you also very carefully design, which makes you somehow, it seems to me also not only, and this is a very good quality of the project, I think, not only embrace, let's say, the design process on the scale of the craftsmanship, not as rhetoric, but it becomes really your, let's say, effort to use your, let's say, architecture uniform and get closer to the language or also to the handicraft process. The question could be eventually, so how much actually you still use these 2 words that you mentioned, poetics and beauty, in trying to govern the project? So how much this, especially?
Not much. I think I've used it today only. Because it was a very linear process. We went through, we had the single unit first, then we said how it will fit into the overall plan. Then based on the site dimensions, we started doing that. So once we were happy, because I have to convince a developer. So first thing I have to do is I cannot show this to him and say, okay, let's do it. So I have to show him how the single unit works, for what value he can sell that at, and how the overall plan works first. So we did that, and then afterwards we started, looking at these options of what best we can do with this plan and this kit of parts. The kit of parts really helped us to kind of organize the facade. So that's how this set of things, kind of fell in place.
And thanks for the nice presentation. And thanks also to have shown the construction site part that is kind of really rare in this kind of conferences. Regarding this topic, I was wondering if you observe different kind of relations or different dynamics while building the housing in this kind of affordable housing, or like compares maybe with the kind of critical mass of what is being built in India. Or if there is all the other dynamics that you observe also with workers, and if inhabitants were also in their life at some point, or kind of curious.
Yeah, like for example, if this project was built in a more like a city kind of a context in Bombay, it would have been done at a little faster rate. But the fact that it was in this geography, there are many sets of problems that one has to face. The contractors not appearing on time, then the client complains, and then we have to call the contractor, shout at them. These are very unforeseen circumstances we come across, and they are very frustrating at times, but there is no way out. That's how it works. If you really want to build in these kind of conditions. But at the end of the day, you see this kind of an image, you kind of tend to forget all that and go on. So yeah, there are these challenges. Like as I said, when I showed you that image where they mark in thread, the only way to kind of ensure that is you have to trust the person who has marked it, because it's not done by machine, it is done by a human intervention. So like that, there are many challenges. Even when they make the concrete window box, to go out there and ensure that it is as per the dimension, and it takes time to develop that trust with those people. But once it is developed, I think then it works a little smoothly.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just had a question regarding in what context was this project appear, because you talked about a developer, and also in relation to the video you showed, this is not a public project. What is the position of affordable housing in India? How did you get the chance to do this project, and also for who? And I think, in the end, I kind of understood the geography of the place, but how's the area? Who does it attract? This this project, who comes to these to this place?
You mean who buys these apartments? Okay. So there's a place called Neral, which is an hour's 1 hour away from the main heart of the city of Bombay, and it's accessible by train. So accessibility is not an issue with this part. When I keep seeing the developer, so there was a developer on board who did this housing project, but based on the standards of affordable housing. So in India, there is a scheme it's called the PMAY. It's the Prime Minister's, it's called Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana in Hindi. It's a scheme for affordable housing for the people in India. So what essentially happens is, if your project falls in that scheme, you get a subsidy of 2.67 lakhs. I think that is close to around 2,500 Swiss francs, roughly. Or a little more than that. So one gets a subsidy to that. That's why the developer decided to kind of go for that, so he could get customers who can buy these apartments. And that scheme guided the size of each apartment, which is 35 square meters and additional 10 square meters is from our side, which is like an added value to that apartment. And what was the other part of your question?
I think I asked a lot of questions actually, but it was maybe like related to the video you showed, like maybe the position of affordable
free housing and free TB. That
yeah,
because I showed that for a reason, because that is the kind of affordable housing projects which the government is built in the past. These are not recent, but in the past. So just want to show that to trigger or kind of put forth our case of affordable housing against that, and try and have a comparison between, what is and what can be.
But there is, continuing to this question of affordable housing, we see that the good project of affordable housing generate quick gentrification often. I mean, is this something that you take into consideration? Because people who buy the apartment, they can resell it, and
it's totally up to them. I mean,
it's free. So
yes.
So this can become quickly expensive housing.
No, I think because of the size, it might remain to a particular cost. And this geography, I mean, in India, places like Bombay, which have a very high real estate value, they are right in the core and in the heart of the town. But here, I think, seems to be really difficult to kind of, that value to go high.
Thank you for the presentation. I also want to comment on the kind of like pedagogical aspect of walking us and our students through a construction site. This happens first. This happens second. I think it's really commentable as a pedagogical experience. Following that conversation, I think the floor plan of the project, I found it quite interesting. It has a lot of perimeter, right? It's very dented.
Yes.
And, a lot of perimeter in this part of the world is kind of like an enemy, right? Because it's expensive, and also you have more surface contact with the environment that is cold, and it means insulation, means heating cost. But obviously seen from other climate regions, more perimeter can be seen as an opportunity, but also it's just more material. So I'm just curious about if there's any ratio. There's more conversations with the developer, of how much perimeter can you actually afford? What are the benefits of it? What are the potential drawbacks? Because I think it's a very unusual floor plan in that sense, which comes with a lot of benefits, I think.
We never really kind of went to that conversation, because if you see in the first initial exploration where we try and understand the basic shape of the unit, which itself is, like the most economical as a form. So that's the point where we started. And I think the resultant was just fitting into the site. And the perimeter is a result of that. I mean, I can go to that. Yeah. So if you see the perimeter is a resultant of that. And a lot of components that are coming out, those are window boxes or the balcony boxes, which are not like completely walled surfaces. They are just like concrete projections.
Yeah, that's very beautiful to see in this drawing, that it's actually a rather calm plan, but what gives all the dentation are these elements that are not structural, so they're not so expensive.
Yeah. So they're projections mostly.
Okay, Rohan, it was a really beautiful lecture. I am very happy that we had this honor to welcome you also as a first lecture.
Thank you so much.
In Europe. And as Alfredo said, I think the value is really the pedagogical also aspect of it, especially for students who are working on their PDM, on their final project. I think to really start sometimes from the nitty-gritty, of how to really make things happen from a very pragmatic point of view, but also with this incredible result. So that's, I think, a really strong accomplishment. So we really congratulate you, and we hope to host you again for another beautiful project.
Thank
you so much.
I would love to come.